So this exercise is going to show you how to join two data sets together in Excel using VLOOKUP function that is built into Excel. The reason you might need to do this is if you have a data set that needs something added to it. So for example, this is a few fields that come with the county business patterns data from the US Census Bureau. There's a column that indicates the FIPS code of the state and then the FIPS code of the county. And each row is representing how many employees and how much payroll and how many companies there are in each county. But I don't know the name of the county, all I have is a FIPS code. So I want to translate that FIPS code into a name and drop it into this new column here. So to do that, we need another table, which I have over here, that has that FIPS code and has the name of the county. In this case, I'm working with all counties that are in Minnesota, so my state FIPS code is the same for every record. And so I really only need to translate this county field. If you were doing this for the entire United States, you would want to have one column that has the combined state and county FIPS code, and your lookup table would also need to have that combined state and county FIPS code. So here's the kind of the rules of the road with this. In your main data table where you want to add the information, in this case we want to add it to this column, it doesn't matter where your column is that you're going to do the matching on. It can be anywhere in the table. It just, the main thing is that it needs to be a single column. You can only match on one. But here's the number one rule. Your lookup table, the one that has the information you're going to pull from, needs to have that matching column needs to be the leftmost column. And in this case, it happens to be in column A of our spreadsheet, but that doesn't matter. It just has to be the leftmost, and I'll explain a little bit more when we get going here. If you don't have it set up properly, this will not work. Okay, so we want to create a new column called county name. And let me talk about VLOOKUP first here a minute. VLOOKUP has several arguments. So the first argument is what cell you want to look up. In this case, we're going to look up, the first one we're going to look up is going to be B3. That's the FIPS code in this table. And then we tell it the array that we want, where we're going to search. I'll explain that in a second. And then we're going to tell it which column number from that array are we going to pull back. And then we need to tell it true or false. We're doing either a exact match or an inexact match. So in this case, we're doing an exact match. We want it to find FIPS code 085 and find only that and match just that. An inexact match would be a situation where, let's say you have crime data and you have the date and the time that the incident was reported to police, and you want to know which police shift that fell in, the morning, the afternoon, the evening, the night, the overnight shift. So all your lookup table, or your array in this case, your lookup table, would simply need to have the start time of each shift, and VLOOKUP can figure out which bucket it falls into based on, is it after this start time but before the next start time. That's worth a whole nother video. But in this case, we're going to do an exact match. Now here's the kicker. An exact match in Excel uses the false one. I know it makes no sense whatsoever. I think it's backward, but false means we want an exact match. So in this case, let's talk about our array. The array is actually going to be here in lookup 2, and it's going to be everything from A3 down to B89. So however many columns you have, it's going to cross that. So A3 to B89 is our lookup. And we have two columns in our lookup, 1 and 2. And it doesn't matter that they're in column A or B. We have column 1, we have column 2. Think of it that way. So we can type this whole thing, VLOOKUP, and the cell we want to look up is B3. And then we could say, where is our table array? Well, our table array is in the sheet called Lookup 2. Whoops, I don't want to uppercase. Lookup 2, and then you have to put an exclamation point, and then you say A2 to B89. I think that was right. Did I, if I remembered correctly? And we need to lock that in place. So you have to do the dollar signs in front of the A and after the A and in front of the B and after the B. What that does is locks the row and the column into place, so your array is always in that same range, even as you copy down your formula. And then, so that's the array portion. Now I'm going to show you an easier way to do that as well. This is kind of the long way, typing it all out. And then we need to tell it which column in our array are we bringing back. And remember, our array has two columns, column 1 and column 2. And so we simply put the number 2 in there. So let's say your array is a big table with 4, 5, 6, 10 columns, and you want to bring back column 10, you simply put the number 10 in there, whatever column it is. But remember, it's not the letters like we're used to in Excel, not column A or B or C or whatever. It's literally the number. And then we tell it the true or false. And in this case, we want an exact match. So there's the false. And we can hit enter. And we've got some county names. Yay! And if something didn't match, like here, you will get an NA, not it wasn't found. And this is because this is 999, which represents state. It's like a statewide kind of thing. It's not in a particular county, I believe. So the number one thing after doing a VLOOKUP is you would look for those NAs. Now remember, I said there is an easier way to do the array. The way I like to do it is actually clicking through and grabbing everything instead of doing the typing. So we can do VLOOK. I'm going to repeat this. So VLOOKUP, and I'm going to say I want B3. So I click on it. Then you do a comma. Then you click over to your lookup sheet, which is in another sheet. Got to get to the top. You don't need the headers, so we're going to highlight the section we want. Notice it's putting running ants around it. That's what I call it, running ants. And then you can go up into your formula bar right here. You're still in the Lookup 2 page. You'll see it looks kind of funny down here in the bottom. You're still in there. Go up here and put in your dollar signs. That's the hardest part. And then the number 2 and the word false. And when you hit enter here, you finish typing it all out, it's going to take you back to your original sheet. And again, it's going to give us the same thing. But I like to do it that way because I'm not having to figure out my full array in letters and numbers, and I can just click around. The other thing to know is that if you're matching on words, you're gonna get more of these NAs. It's likely that they won't match. For example, if I tried to match somehow on county names in Minnesota, I always run into trouble with St. Louis County because sometimes it's written out as S-A-I-N-T and sometimes it's S-T and sometimes it's S-T period. And so then this VLOOKUP will not match in those situations. It's a hard and fast, like everything has to match perfectly. Otherwise it will not work. So one last thing, your lookup table does not have to be in the same Excel workbook. It does work easier if it is. So I like to put it in a separate worksheet like I did here. And labeling my worksheet, of course, helps a lot. But you can also put it over right in the same sheet. I don't think that's such a great idea in terms of just best practices, but it is possible. Or you could have it in an entirely different Excel workbook, as long as that workbook is open. And in that case, your formula, notice how we have to tell it which sheet it's in. Your formula will get longer and you'll have to tell it what workbook it's in, then what sheet it's in, and then what the range is. So it's a little more problematic. So I find having your lookup in another worksheet within the same book is the simplest way to go.